Arirang Prime.
تلاحقنا الكوابيس كل ليلة باستمرار. جسمي في الجنة وقلبي يحترق بالنار. الله أكبر. في 3 سنوات فقط مات أكثر من 100,000 شهيد، يعني ذلك موت 5,000 شخص في كل شهر. يقتل السوريين الأبرياء باستمرار لأنهم فقط طالبوا بالحرية والعدالة والمساواة. أنا طالب سوري أسكن في ما وراء البحار في سول في كوريا. اندلعت الحرب الأهلية في بلد الحبيب سوريا بعد وصولي إلى كوريا. المتضرر الأكبر في الحرب هم الأطفال. سوريا أيضاً هي في نفس الحالة متضررة. يبكي ويعاني الأطفال المساكين في حرب أثارها الكبار.
Among his 8 children, his 4th son went missing after he left the mosque to pray.
ضل استنى بيه، وكل ما يدق حد الباب اهلي يجوا علي او اختي، حد يدق الباب اطلع اركض ثامر اصيح، افكره اجا شو صار، يعني بدي اعرف اخباره، يعني 24 ساعه لا نوم ولا اكل ولا شيء، ابكى.
A month passed and the son returned dead. The 15-year-old boy had endured unspeakable torture.
تعرفت عليه في بيده حرق هون، انت تعرفت عليه، اما يعني بدك تتعرف على جسمه او على وجهه ما بتعرفه من التعذيب. يعني هون في فتحه، هون اسنانه طايرات، عيونه نازلات، كان ضاربينه براسه، طق رقبه، رصاص معبى جسمه، مثاقب مع كسر الايدين مع كسر الرجلين. اما يعني وضعه اللي يعني اللي لقيناه فيه، يعني كانين يستلوا فيه تسلايه، يعني ممكن يكون حاطين على كرسي ومبلشين يقوسوا فيه تقويس، يعني التعذيب يعني يستلوا تسلايه فيه، حرق، سجاير، يعني ما فيش رصاصة بقلبه تاني، يعني بدك تقول إنه ضربوه رصاصة بقلبه، يعني مثل ما بيقولوا رصاصة الرحمة واستشهد منها، كله هذا تعذيب، يعني كان يتسلوا تسلاية فيه.
Samar didn't tell his parents that he had gone to join the demonstrations, where he was caught and then tortured to death, because that would have alarmed them. They believed that he was apprehended on his way to a mosque. In the midst of this ongoing war, many innocent Syrian children are being killed for no reason.
يعني هم بده يخوفوا الشعب، يعني بداية الأحداث بده يعني يشوهوا يعني أكثر تشويه لحد الآن، أو أكثر المجازر اللي صارت، يعني هسه قديش بيروح أطفال كثير، كله عم بيروح قصف عشوائي. أما بالتعذيب أبشع تعذيب اللي هو مر على حمزة الخطيب وتامر ابني. يعني حمزة الخطيب يعني قطعوا له العضو التناسلي اللي تبعه.
Mr. Lee Jung-dok is a freelance photographer. A key part of his job is to see with an objective eye. But as a father of 3 children, he finds it hard not to get emotional.
그 시신을 미라처럼 변해버린 아들의 시신을 받는 아버지 심정이 어땠을까 상상할 수 없죠. 그래서 이것이 다 바로 전쟁의 실제 모습입니다. 전쟁이 일어나면 이런 어떤 찬상들과 비극이 일어날 수밖에 없다는 거. 그래서 지금도 시리아 내에서는 여전히 이런 일들이 일어나고 있고 더 많은 희생자가 나오고 있기 때문에.
Torn apart by civil war, Syria has become a dangerous explosive in the Middle East. The children have taken the heaviest toll. As of July 2013, more than 5,100 children have been killed, and thousands have become orphans. Vast tracts of land where ancient Mesopotamia once flourished now lies in waste. Mr. Lee first visited Syria 6 years ago. He was on a reporting assignment, but he fell in love with the country and ended up staying. Although there were anti-government protests during the time, he never imagined that they would catapult the country into a civil war.
처음에는 저도 믿기지 않았어요. 왜냐면 사람들이 전화기를 가지고 그들이 찍었던 동영상 막 피가 낭자한 거리의 모습이라든지 사람들이 희생당한 모습을 보여줄 때는 이거 혹시 가짜가 아니냐 했더니 사람들이 이제 믿으라고 실제로 일어나는 일.
Eventually, Mr. Lee had to flee to Jordan. Forced to leave Syria after 6 years, he became a kind of refugee in a foreign land. Currently, some 700,000 Syrians are seeking refuge in Jordan, which shares the border with southern Syria. The once desolate desert now bustles with people. This is the Zatari refugee camp. Security is tight. Only those with legal papers issued by the Jordanian government or the United Nations are given permission to enter.
지금 이렇게 통제받는 데서 살기 때문에 스트레스가 있을 수밖에 없죠. 뭐 수용소입니다, 사실은. 좋아요. 내려봐. 좋아.
The refugee camp opened in July 2012 to provide shelter for the large population of Syrians who had already fled their country. The initial estimate of the refugee population was 60,000 people. But now, a year later, about 170,000 Syrians are living in the camp. Even though the camp is funded and managed by the UNHCR, the bleak condition is evident from the entrance.
여기 햇볕이 너무 뜨거워서 지금 더위를 먹어서 지금 계속 토하고 있다고. 아저씨 물어. 비싸네. 한 살짜리.
A middle-aged man carrying his daughter grabs Mr. Lee's attention. One look, and it's obvious that she's critically ill. She's adrift in a semi-conscious state.
للقحة رشحة كله بالخية مراجعة
شو حكوا لك آخر شيء؟
التهابات معاه
ما دخلوها مستشفى؟
لا ما دخلوها مستشفى شيله
حالتها كل مالها بتزيد
أيوة كل مرة بتزيد.
The cause of her illness is the tent. But what exactly is the problem?
여기 지금 텐트 지금 애기가 자고 있었는데 지금 땀이 막 송송 맺혔죠? 지금 온도계로 46도, 현재는 46도인데 지금 좀 모르겠어요, 올라갈지. 땀이 막 송송 맺히고 있죠, 지금요. 제가 지금 잠깐 들어왔는데 지금 땀이 절절 나고 있어요. 사우나실, 마치 사우나실을 연상하듯이 지금.
Come to see our kitchen and bath. This where we put our food. Look at the temperature. How we could eat this.
오케이. 지금 여기 냉장고가 없고 전기가 없어서 전기 없는데 음식을 어떻게 보관하냐 이거죠. 여기서 막 이렇게 더운데 지금 다 이제 뭐 썩을 수밖에 없기. 지금 밖에는 이제 그 파리들이 많이 있습니다 지금. 지금 냉장고 없기 때문에 빵도 지금 이렇게.
This is our freezer.
이게 냉장고랍니다. 지금 이게 빵을 이렇게밖에 보관할 수 없다고.
This is our kitchen.
It gets worse, such as this undefined space.
That is very far from here.
오케이. 이게 뭐냐면은 공중화장실이 너무 멀어서 화장실 가끔 못 갈 때는 여기서 이제 화장실 대용으로 쓰고 여기도 물을 떠다가 이제 샤워를 할 수 없는 시설이 없기 때문에 여기 샤워를 하는 이게 화장실 겸 샤워 시설이죠.
This the cleaner one.
Okay.
You
So
see here, you can see worse and worse and worse under. هاي السبب يعني مش السبب فقر. نحن مش شعب فقير.
نعم.
نحن الشعب طلبنا بالحرية.
نعم.
March 2011. What began as anti-government protests snowballs into a civil war. Violent clashes between Syrian government troops and rebels resulted in the loss of over 100,000 lives. That's almost 5,000 deaths every month. In all, 1.8 million Syrians fled their homeland and took refuge in neighboring countries. 700,000 of them crossed the border to Jordan, and more than half of those 700,000 were young children. After the refugee camp was established, its burgeoning population made the desert the third largest new city in Jordan. The Jordanian border lies at the end of a road that skates to the desert. It's where northern Jordan meets southern Syria.
This is the last. Jordan. This is the last. Huh?
네, 지금 여기 지금 오른쪽으로 국경이 보이고요. 지금 군인들이 있습니다. 지금 마지막 초소가 보이고요. 지금 여기에서 1km만 넘으면 이제 시리아 타운이 바로 보입니다.
There is no barbed wire. The two countries seem to lie side by side on the same block.
지금 여기 지금 길을 막아놨죠? 저기가 바로 이제 요르단에서 마지막 갈 수 있는 땅이에요. 여기서는. 네.
A peaceful, unperturbed land. But only for a moment. An explosion is followed by a cloud of smoke. It's coming from the Syrian side. There were 7 explosions on that day alone.
아, 지금 차가 지나고 있는 데가 지금 시리아 난민들이 나오는 중입니다. 모스크에서 한 100m 이쪽 오른쪽으로 차량 움직이죠.
Some people head towards Jordan. It's not certain whether they are trying to cross over to Jordan or not. But it's become a common sight to see groups of Syrians crossing the border by taxi or car. They race towards the Jordanian border with their lives at stake. They've arrived safely in Jordan. Before, as many as 2,000 people crossed the border on this road in one day. From here, they are escorted by Jordanian soldiers. They've reached safety.
الحمد لله رب العالمين الله يسعدنا ويقوتونا بخير وسلامة ويوصلونا والجيش الحر.
These people have fled their country. It's Mr. Lee's job to interview the Syrians who have made the daring escape. But he's filled with conflicting emotions. Through them, he experiences what his parents' generation went through 60 years ago in Korea.
제가 제 생애 가운데 이런 내전이라는 동일한 한국의 그 6.25라는 내전과 동일한 어떤 그런 내전을 겪고 있는 시리아 사람을 접한 것은 저 인생에서 처음이죠. 내전으로 인해서 실제로 그 여파를 가지고 이렇게 난민이 돼갖고 살아가는 사람을 제가 만나게 된 것은 처음입니다. 그래서 사실 이런 것들을 취재하면서 야, 이것이 전쟁의 모습이구나. 저희 아버지 세대의 사람들이 이런 모습들을 겪었었구나. 이런 어떤 피해들을 겪었고 전쟁으로 말미암아 이런 비극들을 그들이 겪었더라는 것을 간접적으로 제가 다시 한번 생각해보는 기회가 개인적으로 됩니다.
He was in Seoul when he first heard news of the Syrian civil war. Abdul Wahab, a law student in Syria, he came to study in Korea 4 years ago. Not long after he arrived, he heard about the civil war in his country. It's agonizing for him to watch the tragedy of his homeland from afar. As the eldest son of 8 children, he feels a sense of duty to do something for his family and country, but there's little he can do.
당황스럽고 답답하고 제가 혼자만 한국에 있어서 그분들이 시리아에서 고생하고 있으니까 그분들 위해서 할 수 있는 일이 지금 못하니까 조금 답답스럽고
그냥 TV만 보면 뉴스 보면 마음이 아프고 혼자만 마음이 아프면 안 되겠다고 시리아 위해서 뭐가 해야 돼요.
Eventually, he got in touch with a Korean civil rights group that's planning to assist Syrian refugees, but they're making little progress.
문제는 지금 시리아 사람들이 매일매일 죽고 있어요. 또 병원에서 사람들이 약이 없이 죽어요. 그래서 우리는 빨리빨리 뭐 해야지 언제까지 기다려야 돼요. 그래서 어떻게 하지 우리는 그냥 얘기는 끝 없습니다. 빨리
조급한 마음을 이해하는데 어차피 우리가 다 구제할 수 있는 건 아니고 그다음에 일단은 100만 원이 모일지 1000만 원이 모일지 억대가 모일지 몰라도 모이면은 모인 것 같고 1차적으로 어떻게 하겠다.
선생님 이해해 주셔서 감사합니다. 정말 고마워요. 하지만 한국 속담 하나 있는데요. 시작반이다. 난 이렇게 들었는데요. 그래서 시작은 아직 시작이 아니에요. 이야기만 하니까 실제로 시작해 보고 싶어서.
Anxiety makes him impatient. If the war goes on at this rate, the children will have bigger, more painful sacrifices to make. 60% of Syrian refugees in Jordan are children. 1/3 of those children are war orphans. "70% of the 170,000 refugees in Zatari are women and children. Children who have lost both of their parents followed their relatives to the camp. Regardless of whether they have parents or not, these kids have to work to get by. War leaves deep, ugly scars on the minds of children. Is it because of the war? The children here show signs of aggression. They are easily swept into fury and will pick a fight with anyone for no reason.
지금 전쟁을 경험한 아이들이기 때문에 감정 상태가 굉장히 격해 있고 굉장히 좀 이렇게 감정적으로 많이 이렇게 지금 돌이 계속 날라오죠. 네, 돌이 좀 날라오는데 조심하시고 지금 이게 이제 전쟁을 겪은 아이들의 감정이 얼만큼 불안정한지를 좀 대표적으로 보여줄 수 있는 케이스를 할 수 있죠.
The fistfight already forgotten. These boys start chanting together like comrades. Without understanding the meaning of the political message, they simply shout in unison with their friends. Mr. Lee spends some of his budget on grocery shopping. Although refugees in the camp receive relief supplies, those who live outside have to get by on their own.
이건 콩하고 이건 콩 종류예요. 단백질이 많이 있는 콩을 또 선택했고 이거는 치즈입니다. 이 사람들이 빵을 먹는데 어떤 우유를 사가면 냉장고가 없어서 저장을 할 수 없기 때문에 이런 치즈용으로 사용을 했고 쌀도 좀 넣고 해서 가장 기본적인 것으로 많이.
He's only too well aware of the situation to go empty-handed. Most of the refugees brought their belongings with them when they escaped, but their prolonged stay in Jordan has depleted their savings. This family with 6 children fled Syria last April. They tried to hold out for as long as they could in their country, but the situation became too dangerous.
يوم المجزرة ذبحوا أولاد عمي كلهم بباب عمر وصارت المعركة بباب عمر صاروا يفوتوا علينا بالسكاكين ويذبحونا فهربنا هون نحن طلعنا.
أعطيني الفيخة لسامي. عندك الفيخة؟
During their escape, a Syrian rebel helped the family by carrying Sami, who was just a year old. But the rebel was shot by government troops, and he died with Sami still in his arms. Covered in the rebel's blood, Sami made it across the border.
هو ما حكت منو مهم بعد ما
ضل 4 شهور ما حكى.
4 months later, the little boy finally broke his silence. But another symptom appeared.
كل مات أنت شفت يعني إنسان موت شو تذكر يعني شو تذكر دم يعني أحمر أنت شفت دم
لون حطن طايح
أيوة
أو زلم طاح
بارودة
بارودة معه
أيوة
لا عاوز الزلم صالح كلهم ماتوا
كلهم ماتوا
مع ولد حط اسم بس بوت هيك عتم حب أو هيك أو شو هيك طاح
شلونه إيه؟
جد هواي هيك على عينه على صار
He becomes uncontrollable when he recounts the story.
지금 피 얘기를 하고 있어요. 다음 얘기는 피가 얘가 한 살밖에 안 됐지만은 그 탈출하는 과정에서 봤던 그 피를 계속 얘기를 하고 있어요. 그래서
The trauma is serious and he needs professional help, but the family cannot afford it.
تعطيه البارودة تعطيه البارودة جيب البارودة جيب البارودة
تجي حالي تعال.
Eventually, his mother calms him down. The cruelty of war has seized the boy's mind. What he needs is treatment. Omar escaped to Jordan only recently. His house was destroyed by the troops. Bomb shrapnel tore through his leg, and his son lost his left hand.
얘가 손이 하나 없어서 사탕을 못 가고 있어요.
As both the government troops and rebels are employing heavier firepower, the damage is getting more severe.
قبل سنة بعد ثورة.
لا بالثورة.
في ثورة. أنت تخص يعني لما أخوي بداية عيده شو حسيت؟
شو حسيت يعني اختنقت مات مشدس يعني ابن حرام عم يذبح البطل امه عم يذبح الساعة اللي عمره شهر ويومين عم يذبح البنات عم يغتصبوا كله ذبح
Omar's 16-year-old daughter takes care of the household and her baby sibling. It's already been a year since she took on this role. After the bombing, their mother went missing, and they still do not know whether she is alive or dead.
يعني شو أكثر شيء أنت قلقان يعني هلا؟
شلون هلا؟
قلقان
ما بقول غيرها ما جاري البيت.
وجرت البيت. قديش دفع يعني المصاريف؟
110.
100 dinars is equivalent to 150 US dollars. Considering their situation, they should be living in the refugee camp, but they packed their bags and left after 15 days. Omar rented out this place instead.
إذا أنت ضليت في مخيم زاتري يعني عشان يعني كتير غبرة ويعني جو شوب وبرد هناك لكن شو صار لا مرض مرض شو يعني هون ريا وين بالضبط
هو التهابات
رش هيك
هون أحسن
هنا أحسن
What drove his family out of the camp was none other than this. The desert sandstorm smothers everything in its way. It's hard to keep your eyes open or breathe. The refugee camp is no exception. Tents do not provide effective shelter from the sandstorm. Moreover, water is too scarce for the luxury of staying clean. Many refugees suffer from skin diseases and respiratory problems. Wastewater has also become an issue. Ditches were dug to channel the wastewater, but there's no place for it to go. It's hard to endure such dire straits. That is why some families leave the camp and rent a room instead, despite the financial strain.
احنا هربنا من الموت بشار اجينا لقينا الموت قدامنا.
الموت بطيء هون.
الموت بطيء هون. يعني احنا عم نتحمل بس الاطفال ما عم تتحمل. عم بتموت ما عم تقدر تتنفس من الجو هذا. مخنق هون. عرفت شلون؟
Under such bleak conditions, it's not surprising that the military hospital set up in the camp is swamped with children. They all have nearly the same symptoms: respiratory problems caused by desert storms, skin diseases, heat stroke.
هو ما في عنده غير انه سيلان. هذا كيف تستخدمه؟ تفتح هاي تفتحها بتحطه بانفه هنا والفتحه الثانيه فبنزل الوسخ كلياته على اساس بيروح الالتهاب هذا كله. اوكي ماشي.
But for every problem, there is also a solution. And the most effective one would be to change the living conditions. The governments of Saudi Arabia, Arab Emirates, and other countries in the region have donated trailers to the refugees. This trailer bears the Korean national flag. Newly arrived refugees live in tents and then wait to be assigned to a trailer. This Korean trailer park was created in early 2013. Chairman of the Far East Broadcasting Company, Kim Jong-un, made this all possible after he witnessed the plight of the refugees during his visit to Jordan.
다 시찰을 하고 거기 총책임자한테 여기 제일 필요한 게 뭡니까? 저는 무슨 뭐 담요나 뭐 이제 이런 거로 생각을 했는데 여기에 제일 필요한 게 컨테이너 하우스라고 그러더라고요. 시리아 난민에게 행복한 가정을 꾸미게 해주실 때에 아마 귀 가정도 하나님의 축복을 받아 행복해지실 겁니다.
네, 1943님들 하도록 하겠습니다.
As soon as he returned from his trip, he went on the radio to raise funds for 100 trailers.
수천 명이 호응을 해줘가지고요. 저들이 깜짝 전화 여기 절차가 불통이 됐었어요. 그러니까 우리 한국 사람들이 아직 가장 그 6.25 동란을 체험한 사람들이 나도 좀 도와야지 해가지고 십시일반 5만 원, 10만 원, 3만 원, 만 원 뭐 이렇게 해가지고 들어온 돈이 그때 한 4억 몇천만 원이 들어왔어요.
한 달 동안에?
아니요, 5시간.
5시간 동안?
예.
He promised 100 houses, but he received enough donations for 400. A Korean company donated an additional 1,000 houses, and the Korean government another 400. A total of 1,700 trailers were sent to Zatari. Another family is moving into a trailer. All that the family has are 2 mats and a blanket. They've lived in a tent for the last 9 months. After enduring sand and heat in the tent, they finally found relief in a gift sent from Korea. Some envious neighbors gather around the home. How much longer will they have to wait to live in one of these houses? It's hard to tell.
새로운 집에 다른 새로운 집이고 텐트의 삶보다는 전혀 다른 또 새로운 삶이
بالمخيم في شوب لانه الخيمه واطيه عليه وهي بيضة لونها بيض الابيض بفوت فيه الشمس ايوه بس هاي تسوي في فالحام موجود بالمكان بس هاي بتحمينا من الغبره اكثر يعني ايوه
Construction is underway for another gift from Korea, soccer fields.
كم عدد ملاعب كرة قدم يعني هون يعني مخيمة؟
رايحين 5 ملاعب.
5؟
نعم بدعم من السفارة الكورية والحكومة الكورية. مشكورة طبعا.
A delegation of Korean politicians who visited the camp earlier this year made a considerable donation. After much deliberation, they decided to build soccer fields for the children.
우리도 6.25 때 저런 난민 아이들이 많이 있었는데 이렇게 이제는 우리가 이런 분쟁 지역의 주민들을 도와주는 그런 정말 선제적이 되어 있다는 사실에 대해서 감사하고요.
Now this is the right picture. This is how children are at that age. Korea is helping the children recover the things that they have forgotten or lost. June 13th, 2013, Help Syria was finally established. It's an NGO dedicated to helping Syrian refugees.
한국에 처음 온 시리아 유학생 압둘와합이라고 합니다. 시리아 사람들이 지금은 고생 많이 하고 있고 애기들이 학교 못 다니고 병원 아프면 병원 못 갑니다. 너무 상황이 너무 어렵습니다. 옛날에 한국도 마찬가지예요. 한국에 60년 전에도 고생 많이 했는데 지금은 열심히 사람들이 하고 지금은 이렇게 좋은 나라 만들고 있었습니다. 우리도 시리아 사람들이도 좋은 시리아, 새로운 시리아, 뉴 시리아 만들고 싶어서 같이 다른 나라와랑 연하게 살고 싶습니다. 헬프 시리아! 헬프 시리아! 헬프 시리아!
Abdul is the eldest son in his family. His parents and younger siblings are still in the war zone.
My sister, Abdul Rahim, my brother.
Fortunately, his family has remained unhurt. But when he has trouble reaching them by phone, his heart sinks. He has no way of knowing if they are well.
before maybe 20 days, yes. 20 days I called my family and I heard that my mother is very sick. Yeah, so she cannot go to the hospital. So I'm very worried, trying to call him every day, but I cannot.
He can only hope that they are safe. That's all he can do for now.
You see?
He is back from shopping. These are his presents to the Syrian children living in Zatari.
You told me you will go to Jordan, right? So please just send it to Syrian kids there in the refugee camp. Please. It's for kids, it's very hot in Jordan now. So I think they will need it. I saw that in the internet. Many kids is playing outside all the time. I saw the Korean kids using it. So I want to send it to my family, but I cannot. So now just I send it to my Syrian friends there and for Syrian children because I consider them as my family. I have two families actually, small family in my hometown and a big family. All my Syrian children. Yes, I think that. Also this.
It's impossible to fully understand the suffering of those whose lives are in constant danger. That is why Abdul is extremely careful about writing to the children.
하고 싶은 이야기 많이 있지만 이야기는 잘 안 나와요. 왜냐하면 나는 지금 한국에 안전하게 살고 있다고, 편하게 살고 있다고, 또 뭐 몇 개 안 고파요, 뭐가 위험이 없고 그분들이 저기 위험이 있고 몇 개 안 고파서 힘들으니까 I don't know how to explain that, but even that in Arabic I cannot explain my feeling, but just I want to tell them just keep going, because you are our hope, our future.
Among the UNICEF staff stationed at the refugee camp, one is from Korea. Her name is Ha Yujin. About 10,000 Syrian children are attending the school run by UNICEF. These children had no choice but to drop out of school when the war started. The 2 years that were spent away from school have made them more eager to learn.
And when I saw the first day, when the school actually opened, there were children lining up outside of the gate with their parents and trying to come. And they had nothing. They had no school bag. They had no notebooks, no textbooks. But they were just waiting at the gate for us to open the door. That was just the most impressive and exciting scene to see in an emergency setting like a refugee camp.
The children who study in the afternoon have already arrived. The students are divided into two groups, but the kids in the afternoon group have already shown up.
شو بدك بتحب المدرسة؟
ليش جايين بكير كثير على المدرسة؟
بدهم يحبوا يفوتوا على المدرسة.
They would love to be.
بنحب الشغف من المشاهد.
قديش حابين تروحوا على المدرسة؟
هيك نسوي العصير بالكيس.
In class, the children are cheerful and bright, but below the surface, they are still processing what they've been through. It's the war. The biggest reason is the war. The school tries its best to heal the wounds. Thankfully, the mothers are very cooperative in school activities, and this has facilitated the healing process for the children.
One of the overlapping images that I think about when the Korean War happened and when how the mothers in our society have really pushed their children to learn so that they then become have a better life. I mean, think about it. These are the children who are 10, 13, 14 years old, who will eventually go back to Syria and who will rebuild Syria when the whole thing is over. And so think about it that way, how important it is for them to be able to learn and to be able to go back to Syria and contribute to constructive way of rebuilding Syria. So I think that's very important for children here.
These children are the future of Syria, and this school is paving a better road for them. The Mafraq camp is a temporary shelter where the recently arrived Syrians stay before they move into the Zatari refugee camp. The war continues to rage on. It must come to an end for the suffering to stop, but there are no signs of the war abating.
حسب رأيك إنه الوضع بيزداد سوء هناك؟ يعني قتال بزيادة؟ Yeah, she say yes.
It's a downward spiral. People with a homeland must wander as refugees.
إن شاء الله.
الله إن شاء الله بالكل.
يرجعونا وشوفوا تاخذنا يعني
الله يجزيك الخير إن شاء الله اليوم.
This child had to survive in a war-torn hometown for 6 months before finally making the escape. But unable to get any help, they had to wait around the border for 20 days.
لفينا على نصيب، وصلنا على النصيب، قلنا لهم بدنا ندخل هاي البنت تعبانة وسكر الطريق، ضلينا أكثر من 20 يوم لحتى امبارح أول امبارح فتح الطريق، في ناس طلعت وفي ناس بعدها.
Children become refugees before they can learn about their Syrian roots. War is always composed of the worst-case scenarios. Bloodshed and vengeance is somehow justified, and the most frail and the most precious things are stepped upon in hatred. Children are brutalized, used to transport arms, sent to the front line. These atrocities are forced upon them during wartime. The children of Syria are crying. Their tears stream through Syria to the dry desert of the Zatari in Jordan. Mr. Lee continues his reporting. He visits a young boy who still suffers from what happened a year ago. Mohammed has lost his smile. Even though he's not responsible for his younger brother's injury, he blames himself.
ممكن نقطع الوتر من هون وياخذوا له
مقطوع. احنا رايحين على البيت، مو كانت طالعه المظاهره، اجى الامين صار يقوس على المظاهره وعشوائي، يعني مين ما بيشوف قدامه بضربه. يعني اجى امن كثير يعني معهم سيارات ورشاشات وكثير، وقتلوا عالم كثير يعني وقتها. فجأة اجى الامن وصار يضرب رصاص عشوائي. مسكت اخي هيك خبيته تحتي وتخبينا تحت السياره هيك ومديت اجري. طلعت السياره فوق اجري وانكسرت اجري 3 كسوره. قبل ما نتخبى انا واخي كان اخي مضروب باجره والدم طالع من اجره. خبينا تحت السيارة، طلعت السيارة فوق اجري كسرت اجري. وبعد اخذوا اخي اسعفوه وانا لسه عندي بالارض، ما صعبت بجري ضربوني طلقة بجري وصعبت صار يطلع الدم. نزفت حتى راح الأمان كله، وبعدين اجوا اسعفوني انا الثاني.
The bullet shot by the troops ripped through his leg, damaging the nerves and causing paralysis. What plagues Mohammed more than his own leg injury is his guilty conscience. He says he's to blame because he took his brother to the mosque on the day the shooting occurred.
يعني لأنه هذا أخي وأنا بخاف عليه كثير وشفت إجره أنت يعني سبب له مشكلة بإجره، وأنا بضل هيك يعني أطلع عليه كل ما أشوف إجره.
هو زعلان كثير لأنه هو أخذه من البيت أخذه على الجامعة.
They both need to overcome their despair. Wounds eventually heal. The brothers need comfort and support.
هذه مش مني، هذا من واحد سوري هو يدرس في جامعة في كوريا الجنوبية، هو سوري بس هو سكن في كوريا وبيته يعني يعطي الهدية لعائلته. ماشي؟ هذا ممكن أنا أجره ممكن معلش يعني. هذا تماما أنا مناسب يعني قياس 100%. يلا هذا راي يعني بكر راي بكر كويس. شكل يعني كويس يعني. وكمان هذا شو اسمه هذا كلام ممكن هذا أنت لما ترسم ويعني أنت تدرس فيه. ماشي.
It's not an experience that's easy to forget. But Mohammed is only 15. He has more years ahead of him than behind.
ممكن أنت هذا شو هذا؟ هذا شو يعني شو أنت يعني أنت تستعمل هاي شو سبب؟ هذا لما يجي يعني هذا سيء ممكن أنت تفهم مهم. ممكن في قلبك يعني في شيء يعني خرب. ممكن في مستقبل ممكن أنت تفهم كل شيء بعدين يعني في مستقبل أنت حياتك ممكن فرحان. فهمت علي؟ يعني جاي يعني جديد. يعني حياة جديد. فهمت علي? 시리아 난민들을 바라볼 때는 제가 한국 사람이기 때문에 위로할 수 있는 말이 있는 게 뭐냐면은 지금 시리아 사람들이 얘기하는 것이 우리 도시는 70%가 무너졌다고 얘기합니다. 때로는 50%가 무너졌다고 얘기합니다. 그때 저는 얘기합니다. 우리 한국은 100%가 무너졌다라고 얘기합니다. 그러나 60년대가 지난 이 시점에 지금 한국을 보라라고 제가 얘기합니다. 그래서 어떤 동질성을 가지고 한국의 그 폐허 속에서 일어났던 민족을 가지고 너희들도 미래가 있다는 것을 제가 도전합니다. 이것이 바로 같은 동질성을 갖고 있는 한국 사람이 할 수 있는 유일하게 우리만이 그들에게 도전할 수 있는 유일한 메시지입니다. ممكن بعد وقت لما أنت تمهي بعدين أنت ممكن ترسم يعني شيء كويس يعني حياة جديد. فهمت علي؟ حياتك بالنسبة لك جاي يعني أبيض كله أبيض مثل ما بدك أنت ترسم. ماشي؟
They smile for the first time. The brothers have each other. They can heal each other's wounds.
اليوم أيضا خرجت إلى الشارع مع أصدقائي. لا يوجد علاقات دبلوماسية بين بلد الحبيب سوريا وكوريا، ولكن بالرغم من ذلك قدم أصدقائي التبرعات والهدايا لمساعدة اللاجئين السوريين.
이제 계속 모아가지고 이렇게 계속 보내주는 거예요. 여기저기서.
진짜 감사합니다. 감사합니다.
수고하세요.
أعرف تماما الحرب الكورية التي اندلعت هنا قبل حوالي 60 سنة، وأنا أعلم جيدا أن كوريا حققت نجاحا كبيرا في ظل الهدنة. متى تنتهي الحرب السورية؟ كم من الناس الذين يضحون أكثر وأكثر كل يوم؟ بصراحة لا يمكنني حتى أن أخمن ذلك. ولكني لا أشعر باليأس أبداً، لأنني رأيت الأمل السوري من خلال ما رأيته من ماضي وحاضر كوريا.